Greetings and salutations. Hope wherever this finds you in the world, you are doing well, having a good day today. So today, 9/11, 20th anniversary of the attacks in the U.S., killed around 3,000 people. And then you also, a lot of people, I think, particularly within the U.S., don't know about the history of the 9/11 that took place in Chile in 1973, which was this CIA-backed military coup that overthrew the democratically elected government of Salvador Allende. Salvador Allende was a socialist president, socialist leader. So, of course, the United States, the CIA, had to step in and make sure that there wasn't a socialist leader, a socialist government in Chile anymore. And as a result of this military coup, Augusto Pinochet was installed, and he led a brutal dictatorship that lasted, I believe, until 1990, and obviously had hugely disastrous consequences for the people of Chile. And again, it's not something I think a lot of people in the US, frankly, know about or talk about. It's not something, obviously, that gets talked about at all on mainstream media, especially around 9/11. Obviously, you're going to hear probably all day if you turn into mainstream media about the 9/11 in 2001 in the US. And, obviously, for obvious reasons, you're not going to hear about what happened in Chile in 1973, on September 11th then, because it was a U.S.-backed coup that overthrew the democratically elected, president there. But I think it's just, important to, recognize and call that out, especially given that a lot of people don't know about this. And I don't think I really heard about this until probably 2009, 2010. Let's see. So let's look at a little bit into Salvador Allende himself. 1908 till 1973. He became Chile's first socialist president in 1970 before committing suicide during the 1973 military coup. So he took his life right before, I think, they were about to kind of storm the presidential palace or something like that. Kind of interesting. He used a gun that was given to him by well, obviously this is very biased, by Cuban leader Fidel Castro. Oh, that's kind of cool. So he was a politician. He co-founded Chile's Socialist Party, ran for Chilean presidency several times before winning the 1970 election. His regime was supported by working-class constituencies, was opposed in covert actions by the U.S. President Nixon. Following a military coup led by Augusto Pinochet, Allende took his own life. He was part of an upper-middle-class family, had a long tradition in progressive politics. I mean, he co-founded Chile's Socialist Party. I mean, that is pretty impressive, right? In his youth, Allende was influenced by anarchist shoemaker Juan de Marque, who promoted revolution and radical politics. Allende was arrested multiple times while he was a student in the University of Chile for protesting against the government. After receiving his medical degree in 1932, he co-founded Chile's Socialist Party. So he was also a doctor, elected to Chamber of Deputies in 1937, and eventually served as Minister of Health. During the time, he helped implement social reforms such as higher pensions, a free school lunch program, and safety laws for factory workers. He got married, had 3 kids, ran for Senate, or elected 4 times, I should say. Early on, he declared his commitment to Marxism, his desire to promote a socialist Chile. In the Senate, Allende consistently defended the interests of the working class and attacked capitalism and imperialism, siding with the Cuban Revolution. During this time, Allende also ran for presidency, unsuccessfully in 52, 58, and 64, finally winning in 70. So he was in power for about 3 years before this U.S.-backed military dictatorship overthrew him. But I mean, early on, he declared his commitment to Marxism and his desire to promote a socialist Chile. In the Senate, he consistently defended the interests of the working class and attacked capitalism and imperialism. So, of course, from the U.S. empire's perspective, he had to go. He wasn't going to be able to be bought or influenced. So, hence the U.S.-backed, military coup had to be set in place to get rid of him, because Allende was always going to look out for the best interests of the working class. He was always going to call out capitalism and imperialism and fight to make Chile a socialist country that worked, for the masses and not just a small, minority at the top, which is, capitalism in a nutshell, right? For you to be a communist or a socialist is to be totalitarian. I think socialism frees man. I agree with that to a certain extent. As for the bourgeoisie state, at the present moment, we are seeking to overcome it, to overthrow it. Our objective is total scientific Marxist socialism. Boom. I'm not going to resign. Placed in a historic transition, I will pay for loyalty to the people with my life. And that's definitely, what happened. He committed suicide with that gun that was given to him by Fidel Castro shortly before the military coup, I believe, took over the presidential palace. So that's a little bit of background on Salvador Allende, who he was, what he stood for. Just seemed like a very principled person and kind of fought till the bitter end. And Chile went down a very, very dark path once that military dictatorship, once the Pinochet dictatorship was put into place, again, propped up, supported the whole time by the U.S. government, which obviously had hugely disastrous consequences for particularly the working class in Chile, especially the people who were going to come out and call out the Pinochet dictatorship for what it was. Here we go. Here's another article on the topic. Chile from 9/11 to the end of neoliberalism. So basically neoliberalism was kind of installed along with, this military dictatorship. Neoliberalism meaning further privatization, cutting back the government workforce, cutting back benefits to the public, deregulation, things of that nature. That's kind of how I understand what neoliberalism is from my perspective. After the coup against Allende on 11th September 1973, Chile became the laboratory of neoliberalism. I believe, the Chicago boys, like the Chicago University of Chicago economists, were pretty crucial in kind of setting up this neoliberal model in Chile, if I remember correctly. This is from Cristobal Rovera, Kaltwasser, professor of political science at Universidad Diego Porrales in Santiago, Chile. He's a co-author with Cost Mood of Populism. The coup d'etat against socialist president Salvador Allende on September 11, 1973, flung Chile into a long, brutal dictatorship under Augusto Pinochet, who implemented far-reaching neoliberal reforms. After this traumatic experience, the country returned to democratic rule in 1989. The following elected governments opted for gradual approach, adopting measures which, while shoring up economic growth, did not challenge the pillars of neoliberalism erected by Pinochet. Until very recently, precisely this approach was considered to be a success, vaunted as a model for both for other Latin American countries and not infrequently for nations across the world. Yet, despite the impressive decline in rates of poverty since the transition to democracy and over 3 decades of political stability, Chile is now entering into a period in which social conflict and economic tensions are defining its political landscape. Late 2019, widespread protests and serious rioting extended across the country, with thousands taking the streets to demonstrate against the various ways in which inequality and the neoliberal model still define Chilean society. In view of the sheer magnitude of the movement, the political class agreed to offer a referendum in which citizens would have the power to decide if the time had come to change the neoliberal constitution and to attempt a complete reconstruction of the country's institutions. A referendum took place in October 2020, and with almost 80% of the electorate voting for changing the constitution, the result was nothing less than a body blow for the country's elite. I mean, we need that in the US, right? In mid-May this year, citizens were once again called to the ballot box to elect representatives to assembly charged with drafting a new constitution. Let's see. Indeed, to the astonishment of academic researchers and political analysts alike, the primary winners of this crucial ballot were new left-wing groupings and wholly independent candidates with a progressive trajectory. So that's pretty interesting, right? Imagine if something similar was able to take place in the United States, right? Not holding my breath for that, frankly. All right, so that's enough of that article there. But pretty interesting. Let's see. Could you tell me the direct actions America took in Chile that caused the coup? My dad was in Chile at the time, and Pinochet wanted to kill his brothers, and my dad doesn't believe it's America's fault. Okay, let's see. Let's see what this Guardian article says here. Well, this is okay. So this is, well, we'll dig into this article, and if this doesn't work, we'll look at some other ones. This is from the Guardian here. Let's check it out. Here we go. So this is about Australia, but it also talks a little bit about the CIA. Declassified documents show Australia assisted CIA in coup against Chile's Salvador Allende. Former Liberal PM Billy McCain approved spy agency request to conduct covert ops in Chile, move later overturned. Let's see. For 18 months from 1971, according to the US-based National Security Archive, so US government records, ASIS apparently conducted covert operations in Chile, including handling CIA-recruited Chilean assets in Santiago and filing intelligence reports to CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia. So it wasn't just the US government, apparently. It was also Australia helping out the CIA, in this coup effort in Chile in 1973. So pretty interesting because, frankly, I knew about the CIA, the U.S. angle, but I didn't know that Australia played a part. Not super surprised, frankly, but still, kind of interesting. Let's see. But the documents released in June to former Australian Army intelligence officer and academic Clinton Fernandez indicate a witness torn between any realpolitik embracing revelations about how ASIS involvement in undermining fellow progressive left-winger Allende might cause concern. Washington might view the spy agency's retreat as anti-American or embarrass the CIA. Let's see. Damn, so, I mean, Australia getting involved. Jesus Christ. Has been written. I can't deny it that when my government took office, so this was the former leader, right, of Australia. My government took office, Australian intelligence personnel was still working as proxies and nominees of the CIA and destabilizing the government of Chile. Boom. That's former PM. Said ACES had office in Chile, hosted CIA agents. Tensions in between the CIA and ACES, including misunderstanding, embarrassment, harm to service reputations. So pretty interesting. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but I found that kind of interesting that Australia, along with the United States, actually played a role in this coup. Let's see. Chile. We already looked at that one, right? Yeah. So this is somebody who was imprisoned after the military coup took place in Chile, after September 11th, 1973. The first September 11th. The other 9/11, I was imprisoned and tortured after U.S.-backed coup that left thousands of people dead. Jose Cifuentes, who settled in Swansea, maybe I'm assuming that's in the UK or Wales somewhere, after fleeing the country in the 70s, calling for people to remember all those killed through terror. There's Jose. Yep. September 11th was the date of a military coup in Chile, which saw the murder of democratically elected Salvador Allende. Well, technically he committed suicide, but it's kind of a null point, right? And which established a military junta responsible for the torture, murder, and oppression of thousands of innocent civilians. One of those who have suffered under the brutal military dictatorship led by General Pinochet was Jose Cifuentes, now a 72-year-old grandfather of 5 living in Chile, Swansea. Here's the second 9/11. They were activists in the country at the time, working to help poor people improve their lives by securing basic, decent housing and food on the table. So, of course, they had to be tortured and repressed by this new U.S.-backed military dictatorship. For his troubles, he was found himself in prison and tortured, and then spent years on the run before finding sanctuary in Swansea in 1977, where he has remained ever since, raising a family and watching his grandchildren grow up. And he is calling for people to also remember the thousands of his fellow countrymen who lost their lives as a result of the coup support. There's a cat under the table. Sorry, Cornelius. Supported by multinational companies and the U.S. Gov under President Nixon. He said, every decent human being across the world, myself included, rightly and unreservedly condemn any attack against humanity, such as the attack on 9/11 New York. The loss of any human life, wherever it takes place, is a huge blow to parents, children, husbands, wives, brothers, sisters, to the whole family, friends, and the whole community where that life grew. Long before the 9/11 in 2001, the USA, there was another equally horrifying 9/11 in my home country, Chile. There were 3,197 lives cruelly lost, including young, old, women, and men. 48 years later, still more than 2,000 Chilean political prisoners remain disappeared in the sea and unmarked secret places throughout Chile. The Chilean terrorist attack started on another 9/11, but in 1973, with the official financial and military support from the Nixon USA government and the CIA, which lasted 11 years. Respect for human life, the right to dissent, trade union rights, freedom, and social justice were erased, one of the most brutal manners ever seen in South America. And there's the brutal dictator Augusto Pinochet. Real despicable person, right? Jesus. After being this is some of the type of treatment that these political prisoners were faced with. After being arrested as a young man, Mr. Cifuentes was forced to run up and down an empty swimming pool, the sides of which were covered in blood, before having a gun barrel placed in his mouth. He was also used as a punch bag by young officers and beaten with truncheons, and had electric shocks administered to his heads. 3 years ago, he detailed experience in his book, Revolutionary Dreams from Chile to Wales. And he has determined this 9/11 that people remember all those who died under the despotic regime, as well as those killed in New York. He said, I and my family were privileged to have been able to escape Pinochet's jails, and together with over 2,000 fellow Chileans have been an opportunity to start our lives in the UK, in our case in Swansea, Wales. Wow. Of course, let's embrace all the families who lost loved ones, both in the US and the families who lost loved ones in Chile. I'm sure our arms are long enough to reach them all and embrace a peace and true justice for all. So pretty. I mean, this article about
9/11.
9/11 in Chile. Yes, the first 9/11.
Chile.
Yes.
Is that a state?
That is a country in South America.
That's a pretty name.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
So what happened? So it's kind of like the second
thank you, Loki. No, that would the 9/11 that happened in Chile happened in 1973. The 9/11 that happened in the United States was in 2001. The 9/11 that happened in Chile in 1973 had the backing and support of the U.S. government. So probably one of the reasons most people don't know about it. It's not talked about in school. I didn't learn about it. Plan to what?
Run into a building?
No. So the 9/11 in Chile, there wasn't any towers or anything involved. It was this U.S.-backed military dictatorship that overthrew the democratically elected Salvador Allende government there, because the U.S. did not like who was in power there. He was a proud and vocal socialist, meaning he stood up for the rights and well-being of the working people and called out capitalism and imperialism. The U.S. government couldn't stand that, so that's why they had to overthrow him and his socialist government.
Do they know who crashed into the buildings?
Yes, those would be members of Al Qaeda.
Al-Qaeda?
Yes.
That's an interesting name.
Yeah.
Is that like a group or?
Yes, it would be like a terrorist group.
Oh, so kind of like a gang a little bit.
Yeah.
Basically.
Life in Pinochet's Chile. Let's see what comes up when we search that.
You didn't spell it correctly. It has to have a comma and stuff.
But yeah, this is the first 9/11, but I think probably a vast majority of people in the United States aren't aware of it. I wasn't aware of it until, like I said, around 2009, 2010, when I was interning at the Whatcom Peace and Justice Center in Bellingham. And they actually had somebody come speak, a victim of this military U.S.-backed dictatorship in Chile. And so we, other kind of classmates who are also interning there, were able to hear them speak at this event. And I don't remember their name, but it was very, very, powerful speech.
Did anybody survive the second 9/11?
Yeah, I mean, there's people survived. It killed about 3,000 people in total, but yes, not everybody in the towers died. Some people were able
to make it out,
to get out and stuff. Yeah.
So the people who ran the airplane through those buildings, did they hop on the airplane and just terrorize them to run into the?
No, they what it would be called, they like hijacked the plane and flew them into the buildings. Yeah. And one of the reasons that Osama bin Laden, he was kind of one of the heads of Al Qaeda and kind of played an integral part in this, was that the US's role in Saudi Arabia and them having military bases there and a military presence in one of Islam's most holiest sites, he did not like that at all. And I believe that was one of the reasons in like a letter or something he wrote about why that he wanted to attack the United States. Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I want to tell him good night because I need to go to bed. So, good night. Peace out, guys.
Go get some rest. Let's see. Okay, this is an interesting article from Foreign Affairs. I think the planes were CGI or blue beam. Mr. Osman? Osama? Are you talking about Osama bin Laden? Is that who you're talking about? So you don't think that 9/11, like you think it was just like this whole kind of contrived thing? Let's see which one. Here we go. Let's look at this one. Foreign Affairs, The Dictator's Shadow, Life Under Augusto Pinochet. I do like the name Augusto, though. That is, he kind of ruined it, though, right? I wouldn't want to name anybody Augusto after, be kind of like, yeah. In his final heartbreaking radio broadcast from besieged presidential palace, Salvador Allende prophesies that the grand avenues will open again through which free men will pass to build a better society. 35 years later, Chile is a successful democratic society, yet for those Chileans who are marked by the fierce ideological battles of the Allende and Augusto Pinochet years, deep psychological scars persist. Chilean to the core, sober, self-critical, smart, the diplomat and scholar Munoz writes with remarkable moral clarity that Pinochet summed up the faults of a generation of Chile's fatally divided among a few's utopian left and an inflexible, short-sighted center and uncompromising selfish right. So this Munoz person kind of sounds like they're defending, Jesus Christ, they're defending Pinochet. So Munoz indicts Pinochet for transforming a military coup. So he was okay with the military coup, but he wasn't okay for the ruthless, self-serving power grab. Oh, Jesus Christ. This Munoz person is a fucking hack. They're praising Pinochet for his talents. Jesus Christ. Damn, dude. Yeah, okay, that was trash. That was trash. Not my favorite article there. Let's first lesson, young Padawan. History is never as it's told. Just a demolition job, allegedly. Are there any good for like documentaries or like books or movies that you would recommend for 9/11 being kind of an inside job type of things? I'm not definitely ruling that out. The U.S. government, the U.S. empire, they're capable of doing some really disgusting and despicable things, both within the borders of the United States and outside of it. So frankly, I wouldn't be super surprised if they, played some part, or if maybe they knew about it beforehand and didn't stop it, because they would then be able to institute this war on terror. Low key. Okay. What's the name of it? I'll take a screenshot and check it out when I have some free time, because again, I'm not ruling that out completely. I just came across an article the other day showing how during the Korean War, this U.S. war of aggression on the people of Korea, because they didn't like, that was heading in a socialist direction, they actually dropped plague-infested fleas onto the people of the DPRK during the Korean War. So I could definitely see, the U.S. playing some part in this, either deliberately, or like I said, maybe they had some intel that something like this was going to happen and maybe didn't react to it quick enough or take it seriously enough because, well, so that's a little bit about the, 9/11 in Chile. Now let's talk a little bit about the cost of 9/11 since the war on terror started in 2001. Let's see, which is the one we want to look at here. Here we go. So this is for the Institute for Policy Studies. This report, they came out pretty recently. State of Insecurity, the Cost of Militarization Since 9/11 by Lindsay Kashagarian, Ashik Siddique, and Laura Steichen. Over the 20 years since 9/11, the U.S. has spent $21 trillion on foreign and domestic militarization. 21 trillion. That's trillion with a T. I mean, think about that. That's just astronomical. That is a staggering sum. It's almost hard to fathom, frankly. $21 trillion spent on militarization in the US and outside of it since 9/11. 21 trillion. But can't have universal healthcare here. Can't have tuition-free college. We have massive amounts of homeless people. We have huge amounts of wealth and income inequality, but money printer go, for war, death and destruction, repression, both inside and outside of the United States. 21 trillion. So it's always a policy decision when politicians, whether it's Democrat or Republican, talk about how we can't afford these things that would improve the, material conditions for the most, vulnerable and marginalized within the U.S. Can't get universal health care, costs too much. Can't get tuition-free college, costs too much. Can't get an eco-socialist Green New Deal so we actually have a inhabitable planet to live on. Kind of important. Shit costs too much, but 21 trillion for the war on terror, both within and outside the U.S. since 9/11. We're good. Money printer go, and we'll just keep printing. And again, it's a bipartisan effort. Democrats, Republicans, always in support. Republicans even to a higher extent, and that goes with the same thing for most Democrats as well, right? Of that total, 16 trillion went to the military, including at least 7.2 trillion for military contracts, so i.e. enriching the Lockheed Martins, the Raytheons, the Halliburtons, the General Dynamics, the Boeings, the GEs of the world. Another 3 trillion went to veterans programs. 949 billion went to Homeland Security. Again, Homeland Security, very kind of dystopian, creepy sounding organization that obviously shouldn't exist, was created in 2003 and really just increased the, internal suppression and surveillance, mass surveillance of the population within the U.S. And obviously, the U.S. government with agencies like the CIA, NSA, etc., basically are spying on everybody in the U.S. and everybody in the world to a certain extent. And so they go through a few of the things that this massive amount, this 21 trillion, could have provided for things like 4.5 trillion could fully decarbonize the U.S. electric grid, which obviously hugely important if we want to combat climate change in any type of substantive and real way. Decarbonizing the electric grid, kind of important. That would have been amazing. Like we could have already decarbonized from the electric grid for a small fraction, of this money that went to death, destruction, and repression, both within the U.S. and outside of it. 2.3 trillion could create 5 million jobs at $15 per hour with benefits and cost of living adjustments for 10 years. 1.7 trillion could erase student debt. 449 billion can continue to extend the child tax credit for another 10 years. 200 billion could guarantee free preschool for every 3 and 4-year-old for 10 years and raise teacher pay. 25 billion could provide COVID vaccines for the population low income countries. I mean, cost, I'm going to Google cost to end homelessness. And I'm just going to Google the US, but so it's, oh my God. How much would it cost to end, what is that? Let's see, which screen am I sharing right now? Search Operation Truth on YouTube. Okay. Wow. I went back to get the link and the video got flagged for hate speech. Wow. And I'm assuming there wasn't any hate speech in it. They were just trying to provide, information and a narrative that went against kind of the status quo and the interests, of the US government. So that's supposedly hate speech, right? Take a picture of that. Boom. Okay. Let's see. Stop sharing. And I'm going to share this one. It's talking about how much it would cost to end homelessness in the US. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? Like all of this money, this 21 trillion went to death and destruction, and it obviously, enriched the military industrial complex and all of these, defense contractors, but hugely disastrous consequences for everybody else. Obviously, that money could have done a world of good within the US or, internationally for these places that we were dropping bombs on, torturing people, blowing up hospitals, etc. Obviously, could have done a world of good in those countries as well. According to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, it would cost 20 billion to end home. I mean, that is just a drop in the bucket to this 21 trillion, right? That is just a very small fraction of the Pentagon's yearly budget that goes to, death and destruction. 20 billion. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ. Yeah, there's the military. Yeah. So, I mean, again, just the point is there's so many different things, that money, that 21 trillion that's been spent on the war on terror since 2001 could have been used to basically any other use of that money would have had more positive impacts in the world, both in the US and outside of it. And obviously, the only people would be hurting if it actually went to, people who needed it would have been the ruling elite, the military industrial complex, etc. A lot of people about to be homeless. Yeah, I mean, it's a sad state of affairs, right? With that national eviction moratorium being overturned by the Supreme Court. Doesn't really seem like either political party is either capable or really wants to take any type of action to make sure that millions of people aren't about to be kicked out of their, homes. But again, this is a problem. This is the type of crisis that's just part and parcel of capitalism. We need to get rid of the capitalist system, which places the profit motive as the kind of end all be all. That's all that really matters. So if it makes money, if it adds to the corporate bottom line, then yeah, sure, let's kick people out of their houses. Let's deny them health insurance. Let's pollute the environment because that makes money. Let's not. That's again why we need a rationally, centrally planned economy that is planned to improve the material conditions of the people and get rid of the profit motive, because that is actually something that I find really interesting is some people on the left are all about talking about worker co-ops. Like that's the end all be all, which again, yeah, worker co-ops better than not having any employee ownership of a company. But if the profit motive is still there and you have a co-op, then you're going to have, let's say, health insurance company or industry. It might be owned by the workers, but it's still under a capitalist system, so they're still going to be trying to maximize profit. So that's why we need to get rid of the profit motive, get rid of capitalism, and transition towards a rationally planned economy, a socialist system where the well-being of the many is looked after, where we have a dictatorship of the proletariat as opposed to what we have now, a dictatorship of the capitalist class, of the bourgeoisie. The failing of the moratorium is on Congress, not SCOTUS. SCOTUS told them, the prior moratorium, that unless the next one came from Congress, SCOTUS would block it. I do remember saying that, and I think that was back like end of June, right? And Congress, the Biden administration, basically just sat on their hands the whole time while this kind of moratorium ended up expiring, and they all feigned like surprise. Why would Supreme Court do this? But you're right, they were warned about it before. Yeah, they knew it would fail. Yeah. Oh, you're talking about what happened, like Cory Bush and some of the other members of Congress were outside the Capitol, right? Yeah, I did see that. But yeah, where are they now? Like, okay, SCOTUS overturned it. Like, it does kind of seem like a bit of a performative thing when it was more than likely that, yes, Congress needed to do something. Otherwise, the Supreme Court was going to overrule it and overturn it. Obviously, don't agree with the Supreme Court doing that. The right-wing justices there are quite reactionary and seem to be, beholden to corporate interests, to upholding capitalism and white supremacy. The liberal justices to a lesser extent, but I mean, the Supreme Court should at least be expanded, if not disbanded, frankly. Like having lifetime appointments with some of these very reactionary figures, I don't think there's necessarily anything very democratic about that. And something I wanted to kind of talk on a little bit more. Let me look up the article. Midwestern, I believe, is on the Midwestern Marxist site. Let's see. Here we go. Boom. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'd be interesting to get anybody who's watching or after the fact their take on this, because this is kind of interesting. Let's see. Share screen. Chrome tab. Where are you at? So here's the article. I almost thought of writing a rebuttal to this one actually and submitting it. See if they would accept it. So, Socialism Worldwide Needs American Patriotism by Tim Russo. And I completely and utterly disagree with this take. This, like, if the goal of socialism, and it should be a goal of it, is to build international solidarity with our working brothers and sisters across the globe, but you're coming at them wrapped either metaphorically or literally speaking in American patriotism, like propping up the American flag. How are people in the so-called global South going to feel about that when you come at them through that direction? If I had been on the receiving end of U.S. imperialism and somebody from the U.S. came at me, talking about how they were an American patriot, or talking about how the American flag was such a great thing, I would want to slap the shit out of them. I mean, Jesus Christ, we just talked about Chile. the laundry list of the U.S. empire's wars of aggression abroad have seen no ends. I mean, Iraq, Libya, Syria, what the U.S. is trying to strangle to death. Iran right now, Cuba. Biden has ratcheted up the sanctions, the anti-China rhetoric, the anti-Russian rhetoric, the sanctions on Venezuela that have killed tens of thousands of people, the U.S.'s role in the coup in Bolivia that took place in 2019, Vietnam War. I mean, the Philippines. Like you could basically just spend a whole day talking about all of the U.S. atrocities abroad, and that's why I'm really disgusted, frankly, by somebody saying that socialism worldwide needs American patriotism. Like, get the fuck out of here. Seriously, I would love to hear in the comments if you think that is a effective strategy to building international solidarity, with the working class, with the most vulnerable, marginalized, with the victims of U.S. imperialism abroad, because frankly, I think that is the complete and utter wrong strategy to adopt. So let's see. So then he's talking about Jackson Hinkle because, yeah, this whole thing came about from a tweet by him. He said, I'm a Marxist-Leninist. I'm an anti-imperialist. I'm an American patriot. Like, what? The first two, totally with you. Those are great things to stand up for and, shout from the rooftops about, and, trying to live up to those ideals as much as possible. That's a great fucking thing. I'm an American patriot. Those go completely against the first two. Like, they're kind of inverse, opposite sides of the spectrum. You can have one. You can be an anti-imperialist. You can be a Marxist-Leninist. You can't be an American patriot as well. Like, it's a square hole, round peg type. Like, that shit don't work. Like, what the fuck is? I mean, Jesus Christ. Before being arrested, well, I mean, that was cool that he went to the Capitol and did that. Down came the condemnations from the prancing, posing, permanently pointless left who can abide neither American patriotism nor nonviolence. So he's also only for nonviolent action. I don't know. I used to be more of a national patriotism worldwide do not really belong in the same sentence. Agreed. I mean, I'm totally nonviolence thing. I used to be more in line with that type of take, but frankly, there is a role for violence in revolution. Revolutions are inherently a violent thing. It's these, class antagonisms coming to the forefront. Again, revolutions are a violent thing. It's not like going to a fucking dinner party or something like that. Like, there's going to be some bloodshed involved, unfortunately. So, I don't know what. I mean, I think you can affect certain change through nonviolent means, but was it Stokely Carmichael, I think, who said for nonviolence to work, your oppressor has to have a conscience or something? I'm paraphrasing. Obviously, the U.S. empireless settler colonial state has never had a conscience. I mean, for fuck's sake, it was founded on the genocide of the indigenous people here and the enslavement of Africans. So then he's talking about how Occupy Wall Street had red and white stuff. Let's see. Aside from tricking the left into playing the FBI's game, Capital has long been well aware that neutering the American left is always best done by the left itself, assuming the posture most guaranteed to isolate it from the American working class, violence, and a self-loathing hatred of our own country. Who wants to be around self-loathing haters who are violent? No grandmother pushing a baby in a stroller is ever going to support anything like that, ever. Without that, grandma, you have no movement, no mass line, no cultural hegemonic change, no revolution, nothing. You only have a petulance the FBI thanks you for providing. Mao would know this, Lenin, Che, Fidel, all of them. More importantly, so would the long line of radical American leftists, of whom today's ultra-leftoids know precisely nothing. Um, I don't necessarily. So, I mean, for fuck's sake, like he's talking about Lenin here. After the Russian Revolution, after the USSR was established, did they keep the old Russian flag? No, they came up with the flag of the USSR. And if the goal again is to build, working class coalitions and solidarity beyond the borders of the U.S., you you should not be adopting the tag of being an American patriot or prancing around with the American flag or wearing American flag shirts or hats, whatever. Like, I mean, Jesus Christ, how fucking off-putting would that be to people again who've been under the boot of US imperialism for fucking, decades or even, almost centuries at this point, for God's sakes. It's like, really? How are you going to build a movement when you're doing that? It makes no sense whatsoever to me. And it makes me want to look at Twitter, actually, and because some people had some really good responses to this. Nicole. Okay, here we go. Boom. All right. Yeah, so let's look at his tweet on this, Jackson Hinkle's tweet, because some of the people are doing a better critique of it than I am currently. So let's check this out. Share screen, Chrome tab, and here we go. So his tweets above. I'm a Marxist-Leninist. I'm an American imperialist. I'm an anti-imperialist. I'm an American patriot. And again, if you're, I mean, if you're against anti-imperialism, you can't be an American patriot. The whole American project is tied to imperialism, is tied to the highest stage of capitalism, imperialism, as Lenin points out. I mean, it just seems like such a weird, like, why the need to say that? That is quite a declaration. Again, I think that really speaks to it, right? Coming Jackson Hinkle, I think, is a white person, white man, right? And he has, benefited from system of, white supremacy within the United States, and doesn't maybe really think about how identifying as an American patriot can't line up at all with being an anti-imperialist. Again, they're literally the antithesis of each other. That's a good one. Someone like that. People have been trying the souvenirs that have any legs. This is one of my favorite ones. Being an ML or an MLM, an anti-imperialist, requires being opposed to the settler colonial entity that is USA. Being an American patriot is reactionary and in contradiction with the first two things listed. This is just socialism with settler colonial characteristics. Boom. There you go. Pretty sure Marx and Lenin would disagree with that. Lenin was patriotic about red, right? He overthrew the government in Russia to set up the USSR. Oh man. You at patriotism. I mean, this one's just funny. I'm a KFC, I'm an A&W, I'm a Taco Bell, I'm a combination KFC and Taco Bell. That's right. What an abomination. Tend to agree. FBI. Some shady. Oh, yeah, he also has the American flag in his backdrop. I've watched a few of his videos or live streams, and I did not. Not to say like he should be canceled or anything like that, but again, I think the justified criticism he is getting from this, he should, as Mao talked about, be engaging in some self-criticism, like maybe come reevaluate this position, because again, first two things don't match up with the third one. Yeah, this stormy applause. America is a leading imperialist power. How then can you be an American patriot and an anti-imperialist? You can't. It don't fucking work. Right? Haxon Jinko. But it seems like most of the people, in the comments were coming, to the same conclusion that I can, that it don't make any fucking sense. The first two with the last one, right? Socialism with manifest destiny characteristics. I'm an anti-imperialist, except our own. I fucking love that one. Holy shit, that's so good. Nice. That's a funny looking dog. Your badge number. I'm an American idiot. I won't call him an idiot, but I do think this take is idiotic, right? I think, yep, that's yep, that's funny. All right, that's enough of this, but it says, I heard a Brazilian leftist say on Fred Hampton Leftist that in the U.S. we fight not just for ourselves, but the entire world because they're trying to end American imperialism. Accurate but heavy. Hinkle has clarified that when he calls himself a patriot, he's talking about having pride in the various worker movements in the U.S. over the year. It's a strange take, but as his reasoning says, his pride is in the American people, but that is not really the same thing as patriotism. He's confusing terms. I obviously don't think there's anything, wrong or heinous about having pride in, the working class or worker movements, but again, I don't see why you need to call yourself an American patriot. But that's just me. Let's see. So I definitely disagree with this, Tim Russo person who was siding with Hinkle on this Midwestern Marx paper. Oh, actually, let's be interested to see what the comments say on this one, to see, because the first comment I read, like, just a scathing rebuke at Hinkle and Russo's point, which was really well put together. Here we go. Boom and boom. Here we go. Here we go. This is perfect. My guy, more like you're the one stuck in the honeypot of patriotism. For the imperial core, you obviously know that should be targeted and abolished, but fine. Continue to speak of this love you seem to know all about. Also, what's we when referring to the country as a left country? Your idea goes against decolonization and the land back movement, which, by the way, is even what those leftists you call out are fighting under and for. That's the one out of actual love and fighting for unity, including that grandma pushing the baby stroller. The hatred and anger you put on the leftists, just quote tweeting a guy's oxymoronic post like, yeah, buddy, know the difference. That false sense of unity, sanctity under or in favor of the name of America with the K, that's a scam, a lie, one that only benefits certain people, your so-called radical leftists. That's the name of the country that's wreaked trauma and exploitation literally around the world, as I was talking about earlier. My home country, and the same with those leftists you call out. How can people not react the way they did to the dude's post? And by the way, Mao, Lenin, Che, Fidel, yeah, they were obviously vehement in their support for abolishing the imperial core, to never stand back for liberalism. Compromise, that nationalism you speak of, or that they refer to, yeah, that meant in their respective countries, because yeah, nationalism isn't inherently bad, but reactionary one is the US version, right? Just as American patriotism, it's just contradictory. And yeah, no country is perfect, not only the US that needs to be called out for imperialism and neocolonialism. You're right that there's the need for class solidarity. I'm all the way for that, just not under American patriotism, because what the fuck would I do that for a state that has only caused so much anguish and genocide? Question mark. Sure, there are the good things that has happened. Good things do come up with community, some to be even celebrated, definitely, but that doesn't negate the terrible things of American patriotism. Basically, America, the point of going for the imperial core isn't even about redemption. It's about the absolute abolishment of this fascist carceral state on stolen land. Boom. Let's read that again. It's about the absolute abolishment of this fascist carceral state on stolen land. Couldn't have said it any better. Also saying that that present day left is only about aesthetics, though not completely wrong or unwarranted, is mostly unfair and generalizing. What would you know? There's still the leftists, to be more respectfully specific, the communists and anti-imperialist movement orgs that exist in the global south outside your American patriotism has done more for the left, more than your idea of radicalism could ever do. Yours don't ever compare to history's list of revolution, and especially of the Haiti Revolution. Again, the only successful slave, revolt revolution history of the world. And Haiti and the people there have continued to pay a huge price for that. Which would be very against American/Western patriotism. You're just giving this false idea of community under Americanists too much credit, and the left being not American. Like, that is the point. Don't get me wrong. I see where you're coming from, but really, socialism worldwide just doesn't need American patriotism. Boom. Completely agree. As I was alluding to, that's going to be very, very disastrous attempt if you're wanting to build international solidarity among the working class, if you're trying to wrap that shit in American patriotism. Yeah, you disagree because you're white, you're with internalized racism, and see the indigenous struggle as unimportant, disgusting. Holy shit, how utterly dismissive can you be? How dare you call yourself a Marxist? Everybody's calling out this Tim Russo person. I'm kind of here for it. Dude, what version of any of these theories you say influence you are you reading? Because they sure as hell aren't the original translation. If you want to say you like football, just say that. You don't have to stand for the anthem and support genocide because of it. Oh, and Occupy straight up failed. Well, I mean, it failed, but it also, the Obama administration, made sure it failed and, coordinated that national crackdown on it, but it's a different story. Nothing came out of it besides Obama, and all we got from him was Dunstruck hospitals and increased oil drilling. What's next? Are you going to be saying that Lenin was a honeypot because he hated the Russian Empire? Your series of strawmen maybe what was written here, but they're not. Now Google August Lich. This is embarrassing. Damn, he's getting fucking thrashed. Very cool to know you think of the working class like they're toddlers who can't handle learning the fact that U.S. is a settler colonial state that's fundamentally unsalvageable, and instead need to have their patriotism pacified in order to convince them to get on board with socialism. No, thank you, officer. That is a good take. I agree. Like, let's get some more education, some more propaganda work. That's why we need a really, strong vanguard party that will, able to partner with and, work in concert with the working class and educate them about things like this, why American patriotism is in fact a bad thing. Let's see. That's a long one. Let's see. One thing you got right about America Left is that they're un-American. This is a matter of fact, considering that they reject the behaviors required by American system. These systems form the base of the culture. When you become a Marxist, you reject American culture, meaning that you also reject the culture acceptable definitions of patriotism. Why do you feel compelled to hold on to the term when the usage is entirely contradictory? Familiar with the historical cultural field of psychology. Good points, Joseph. Damn, he's blowing it up in there. Just come out as a white supremacist already. Y'all acting like a psyop at this point. Read, any non-white Marxist expand on your analysis or prove everyone right, that you're a class reductionist who only wants to improve the current power relation to make sure it works for your class. This is a very unserious position, is revealing an unhealthy psyche of whiteness that isn't being addressed through your analysis of Marxism. Yes, a book that I would like to get. Anybody would like to gift it to me or has it on loan? I could trade you, for some other books. Oh shit, is there a PDF of it? Let me see, but I've heard really, really good things about this book. Let's see. Stop sharing, and then we'll show this one. Let's see. Here we go. This is a book been heard about for a while. Heard of Cedric Day Robinson a little bit. I think I caught part of his interview he was doing on Zero Books at one point. Robin D.G. Kelly is also really awesome. As another book I want to get about communism during the Great Depression in the South, or maybe a particular place in the South. His ambitious work, first published in 1983, Cedric Robinson demonstrates that efforts to understand Black people's history of resistance solely through the prism of Marxist theory are incomplete and inaccurate. Marxist analysis tend to presuppose European models of history and experience that downplay the significance of Black people and Black communities as agents of change and resistance. Black radicalism must be linked to the tradition of Africa and the unique experience of Blacks on Western continents, Robinson argues, and any analysis of African American history needs to be acknowledged. So he's talking about Du Bois, C.L.R. James, Richard Wright. Yeah, I know, it'd be amazing to be able to get him on the channel somehow. But I do hope I should have a guest coming on the channel next Friday to talk about communism, the USSR, and Stalin, which should be really interesting, and something else that I've been really, let's see. The problem is that in the U.S., worker movements are easily undermined with third rail issues that other nations largely ignore. What would be an example of a third rail issue? But something I find very, very interesting, something that I had a lengthy back and forth with my partner earlier today, is the issue of, the use of violence or repression or authoritarianism in a socialist society in order to protect and uphold the, socialist government, the socialist revolution. What role, if any, does, repression and violence play in that to suppress the, reactionary forces, whether it be from the inside or outside of that country, who are trying to overthrow that socialist government. Is it morally justifiable? Is it better if it's being done under the name of socialism as opposed to all of the repression and violence and death that happens as a result of living in this capitalist system that we have in the US? From my perspective, I think it's referred to as a dictatorship of the proletariat, why is that not going down, for a reason. And I think in that transition phase, the lower stage of communism, socialism, there in fact would need to be some repression happening. And obviously a big difference is why are we repressing? It's because we're trying to uphold and make sure this is a long lasting revolution, and there will be reactionary forces that would need to be dealt with in that case, as has happened in any successful socialist country, as going back as far as the USSR basically. So I think there is a place for that, and obviously you're trying to work out that contradiction. You obviously don't want to have to repress people, or use violent methods to do that, and you obviously want to minimize that to the extent possible. But I think it's very naive to think that it's, well, we took over now so we can let our guard down, we can let these reactionary forces build up their strengths, or partner with these other imperialist forces that let them overthrow us. Fuck it, we'll just let it happen. I don't think that's a very serious take to have. And I think obviously there's lots of ways about dealing with reactionaries, and this Mao talks about how to differentiate enemies from friends. Friends are people that are able to at least not stand in the way, or people who aren't actively fighting to overthrow the socialist government. And enemies are the people and groups who would be taking a active part in trying to overthrow that socialist revolution that had been implemented. And there are obviously different ways to combat those forces. And let's see what Mao actually had to say about this. The question is page 28, his little red book. The question of suppressing counter-revolutionaries is one of a struggle between us and the enemy, the contradiction between us and the enemy among the people. Some see this question in a somewhat different light. Those with the rightist way of thinking make no distinction between the enemy and us, and take the enemy for our own people. They regard as friends the very persons whom the broad masses regard as enemies. Those with the left way of thinking magnify contradictions between ourselves and the enemy to such an extent they take certain contradictions among the people for contradictions with the enemy, and regard as counter-revolutionary persons who are actually not counter-revolutionary. Both these views are wrong. Neither can lead to the correct handling of the question of suppressing counter-revolutionaries or to a correct assessment of this work. Let's see. So this is also very interesting. This is why I think the job. Why is that comments not refreshing? New comments. It's not showing the new comments. Why? Oh well, that sucks. Oh, are easily undermined. Yes. Okay. Hide that. I wonder if it's not showing the other ones. But I do find it, yeah, the role of the Vanguard Party, I think, is super important in being able to, educate, working people on these, various issues. And was it Lenin who talked about actually, let me see if I can do this, but it'll probably echo. I was going to say, I don't think it will show. God damn it. All right. Anyways, I'm not going to be able to look at the comments because it's not showing for some reason, which really sucks. Hide that one. New comments. Why won't you show? Anyways, that sucks. I'll have to look at them after. 29. The only way to settle questions of an ideological nature or controversial issues among the people is by a democratic method, the method of the discussion, of criticism, of persuasion, and education, not by the method of coercion or repression. To be able to carry on their production and studies effectively and to arrange their lives properly, the people want their government and those in charge of production and of cultural educational orgs to issue appropriate orders of obligatory nature. Let's see. Here we go. So here Mao was talking about, the bourgeoisie, the petty bourgeoisie will give expression to their own ideologies. Inevitably, they will stubbornly express themselves on political and ideological questions by every possible means. You cannot expect them to do otherwise. We should not use the method of suppression and prevent them from expressing themselves, but should allow them to do so and at the same time argue with them and direct appropriate criticism of them. Completely agree. Viewpoints, divergent viewpoints, whether it's coming from a bourgeoisie or petty bourgeoisie perspective, those folks should be allowed to express those views, and it would be, the work of, the Revolutionary Party, revolutionaries in general, to critique them and criticize them and call them out for being, the reactionaries that they are. I think, when further action would need to be taken to, repress these counter-revolutionary forces, it's when they would be taking, concrete actions to actually try to, overthrow the socialist government, the socialist revolution. But agree with Mao there. All, those type of viewpoints should still be able to be, expressed in a, socialist society that is working on, becoming communist. Page 30, this is just a continuation of that previous passage I read. It certainly would not be right to refrain from criticism, look on while wrong ideas spread unchecked, and allow them to monopolize the field. Yes. Mao talks about the importance of criticism and self-criticism, and that's, something I need to really take to heart. Really good at criticizing other people, but I also need to, take that same, same thought pattern to my own thoughts and beliefs, and work out the contradictions with how I view and see the world. So super important. Mistakes must be criticized and poisonous weeds fought wherever they can crop. However, such criticism should not be dogmatic, and the metaphysical method should not be used, but effort should be made to apply the dialectical method. Yes, working through those, contradictions. What is needed is scientific analysis and convincing argument. I think you can almost move mountains with that, right? Scientific analysis and convincing argument, kind of important. Let's see. Oh, so he's talking about the in Hungary now, 31. The counter-revolutionary rebellion in Hungary, 56, was a case of reactionaries inside a socialist country. Actually have, family from Hungary back in the day, in league with the imperialists, attempting to achieve their conspirational aims by taking advantage of contradiction of the people to foment dissent and stir disorder. The lessons of the Hungarian events merits attention. Let's see. Here we go. This is kind of what I was referencing earlier. Page 21. I'm probably going to end it after this. Our state is a people's democratic dictatorship led by the working class and based on the worker-peasant alliance. What is this dictatorship for? Its first function is to suppress the reactionary classes and elements, those exploiters in the country who resist the socialist revolution, to suppress those who try to wreck our socialist construction, or in other words, to resolve the internal contradictions between ourselves and the enemy. So that's what I was talking about. There needs to be that suppression, a little bit of authoritarianism in order to repress these reactionary forces. Otherwise, these socialist governments, these socialist movements would be, toppled within a matter of months, weeks, if not days, if these reactionary forces, these counter-revolutionary forces are not dealt with, as Mao was talking about here. Totally agree. For instance, to arrest, try, and sentence certain counter-revolutionaries and to deprive landlords and bureaucrat capitalists of their right to vote and the freedom of speech for a specified period of time to maintain public order and safeguard the interests of the people. It is likewise necessary to exercise dictatorship over embezzlers, swindlers, arsonists, murderers, criminal gangs, and other scoundrels who seriously disrupt public order. Second function of this dictatorship is to protect our country from subversion and possibly aggression by external enemies. There, again, the fighting against the counter-revolutionaries within inside China, which is what Mao was talking about, obviously, and then, enemies from abroad as well. Excuse me. In that extent, it is the task of the dictatorship to resolve the external contradictions between the enemy and us. The aim of this dictatorship is to protect all our people so that they can devote themselves to peaceful labor and build China into a socialist country with a modern industry, agriculture, science, and country. Wise words from Chairman Mao Zedong there. This was a fun little chat. Have to do it again. Share, like the stream, helps with the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel if you're not. Become a patron if you're so inclined. Oh yeah, I don't think I shouted out during this video yet. So quick shout out to my partner Rosa and Independent Left News, the two Uber comrades on Patreon, supporting me and this channel. Thank you. If you're so interested in becoming a patron, see the link down below, but I think I'm going to end the live stream now. I might be having a live stream tomorrow on Independent Left News's channel. Where's that book I would be reading? One sec, I'm gonna go grab it. So I think I'll be going on Independent Left News's channel tomorrow. Just having my own stream on there, talking about this book by Torkel Lassen, if I'm pronouncing their name correctly. So you can see it's called Riding the Wave, Sweden's Integration into the Imperialist World System. First book I've read by Torkel Lassen. Super impressed with his depth and breadth of analysis. So excited to, if I'm not on Independent Left News's channel tomorrow, I think I'll be back on here talking about this. Also be at 9:30. So tune in tomorrow if you want to hear about what this is all about. Found it very, very interesting and insightful on a lot of levels. So this has been fun. Hope you're having a good night, day, morning, wherever you're at in the world. All power to the people. Capitalism is the virus, and the antidote is socialism, with the ultimate aim of, communism taking over the world. Communism being, from my perspective, a classless and stateless society where everybody's material conditions have increased to such a level, the need for the state simply withers away. And I think that is something, that we should all be working to and for in whatever way or, capacity works for us. Peace, much love, all power to the people.